Greetings of peace and love. My name is Ramhotep L, and today we're going to discuss real briefly a topic of health. It's something that I know needs to be covered amongst melanated people as well as non-melanated people. And when you understand health and diet, I'm a firm believer that depending on your species will determine how extreme you are to go into certain directions of health. It has a lot to do with your species. Now, when you talk about veganism and vegetarianism in general, I personally believe that no matter what species you are, if you are to become a vegan, this to me is what's called a universal diet. That's the good thing about it. Being a vegan is a universal diet. It doesn't matter if you're so-called white, so-called black, so-called Asian, whatever may have you. I personally believe that the vegan vegetarian diet is the diet that will bring us together and unify us. Food is important because food is what really it goes into our culture. And this is how we eat. This is what makes us different. And you notice that now there's another degree to food. Now that's one level to it. Veganism and vegetarianism to me is universal. To me. I believe that everybody can be a vegan. Now I'm not saying everybody must be a vegan. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you need to go be a vegan. If you're not, then shame on you and you're gonna go to hell. You know, Ron Hotep don't believe in all of that. I'm just saying if you want to vibrate and get to certain dimensions and go on to certain levels in meditation and things like that, you should take on a vegan diet. Now, when you talk about the type of foods that you're to consume, this is when culture comes into play. And I'm a firm believer that certain herbs that you take can reflect your culture. Certain spices, that you consume is a direct bearing and effect on the part of the earth that you're more so indigenous towards. Now, many of us in America, we have all kind of bloodlines running through us. This is why we eat all kind of foods. And America is the biggest melting pot. Those particular people that are in America. But most of you are predominantly come from a certain region or a certain culture. Predominantly, you can look at most people and tell me, you have different species, but you have like the core species are so-called Caucasians, so-called black people or melanated people. And you have different species within all of these, but these are the core species. Then you have Asians, and different species within the Asian species. And in that, there's certain types of foods that you can get away with consuming more of based on your species. Now, this episode, I'm going to talk about sugar. But when I speak on health, though, I want to lay the foundation to say that this is how Ram Hotep L teaches health. Like, I don't necessarily try to tell people that everybody's supposed to eat exactly like this. Certain species and certain cultures use more spices, certain spices from that end, or certain like spicy food even. Certain cultures use more spicy food than others, like cayenne pepper, like certain, or jerk seasoning. Many of us from the Caribbeans, I have a shout out to my Caribbean family out there. We like that jerk seasoning, we like that good jerk. And then we have other cultures that will come and enjoy and eat our food, but they might not want to eat it every day. But there's something in the jerk that's good for you. This is why you like it, and that seasoning that helps you. So when I talk about sugar and the things I'm going to say about sugar, make sure you keep this in mind. Now, sugar, I'm just choosing this as a speaking piece because this is the biggest drug known to man. You laugh at cocaine addicts. You laugh at weed heads. You laugh at alcoholics. But by far, sugar is the biggest drug on the planet. That's right, it's the biggest drug on the planet. Most of you probably watching this video are addicted to sugar or have been at some point. Myself included. Addicted to sugar. But the thing with me is that I know how to get off of it because I understand it, and this is what I hope that you'll understand in this video, is how to break your addiction from sugar, because you have to understand nobody really taught you about sugar. So you have to understand sugar had a lot to do with slavery. See, it wasn't a time, at one time, sugar was not, when I'm talking about sugar, I'm talking about grain sugar that comes from the sugar cane. This grows in a certain area. This grows in Asia, primarily in Asia. Europeans didn't even get sugar until recently, to the modern era almost even. And in Africa, they didn't even too much consume a lot of sugar. So sugar has a lot to do with slavery. And people got into using sugar. It was just like peddling dope. This was the basis. If you start studying sugar, this was the basis of slavery. Sugar is a war tool. This is one of the biggest tools that they use to control people. Before I get into the scientific part of it, I'm going to help you to understand metaphysically why sugar is so dominant. And it's simple. It's because, like my grandma used to always say, "Come here, baby, let me give you some sugar." She'd give me a kiss. Shout out to my grandma. And she would always give me this big hug, and she was a sweet woman. So sugar goes into people. The reason why we want all this sugar, we want to always have sugar, is because we're lacking. We don't have enough sweet people in the world. And I'm not talking about sweet being gay, because they try to call homosexuals and people like that sweet. Like, oh, he's sweet. He got a lot of sugar in his tank. That just means he's a good-hearted person, or she's a good-hearted person, or whatnot. Especially the males, though. They mainly say this about the males. Like, oh, he's sweet. I know that's a slang term or whatnot. But I'm just saying, in general, like, just get out the homosexual mentality right now. The homophobia mentality. We need more sweet people in the world. Because if we have more sweet people in the world, people wouldn't consume as much sugar. See, metaphysically, the foods that you eat tell a lot about your emotional state. If you eat a lot of sweets, this means you're lacking love, essentially. Where's the love? We need more love in this world. So it's strategic. It's strategic. So now, to understand sugar, you have to first understand that we didn't always use grain sugar or refined sugar. Honey was really what was used as a sweetener before we got the world strung out on this dope called sugar. It was honey. And I'm not saying there's something wrong with sugar. That's what I'm trying to say here. I'm not saying there's something wrong with eating sweets, because I'm going to balance this video out. So before you be like, man, this guy's religious health nut. No, this is not what I am. But honey was the sweetener that we used. Now a lot of vegans, they're not for that. They say you shouldn't use honey. I'm not a person that, I don't promote that personally. I mean, you have your reasons. You say, well, honey is produced, it's bee vomit, and there's other ways of getting sugar or sweeteners outside of honey. But honey has medicinal effects. Honey is a medicine. It's very medicinal, and you can put honey in your tea, and it'll help you get over the cold a lot quicker. Maple syrup, and people use maple syrup, but you can't get that everywhere. You can get honey before they start. That's why they start. If you notice, sugar's dominant. You can get sugar everywhere, but then there's a shortage of bees. The bees are dying off. This is because we're not using honey as a sweetener anymore. It's messing up the ecosystem. So all of this is important. It's the reason why we have bees. This is the rudimentary parts of nature. Your parents taught you about the birds and the bees. The bees are important. So honey was the original sweetener, but when slavery became a part of the dominant gross national product of this economy, of this global economy, is fueled by slavery, different forms of slavery, whether it's sex slavery, human trafficking, and things of that nature, different levels, servitude slavery, debt slavery. See, debt is slavery, and they have so many angles to get you caught up in the slavery. But sugar, believe it or not, is the basis of it. See, sugar numbs you. So it's a drug, it makes you feel, not only, especially refined sugars. So they came up with this thing called refined sugar, where they refine the sugar, because then you have raw sugar. And many of you never even had raw sugar, probably. Maybe some of you have. But if you take the raw sugar, you'll notice that it's not Especially if you're addicted to sugar, you got to keep it real with yourself. It just doesn't hit that spot a lot of times. See, there's different forms of sugar. You have fructose, and you have lactose. Anything that has the "-ose" on the end of sugar. Glucose. So you have all these different forms of sugar. Fructose comes from predominantly fruits. Glucose comes from vegetable type based sugars. And then you have, even when you get sugar from the sugar cane, you have what's called raw sugar. And raw sugar, if you taste it, it's not really as sweet. And a lot of times it doesn't really hit that spot the way that your refined sugars do. It just doesn't hit that spot. And it doesn't really get you your fix that you need, because it's a drug. And that's when you first start understanding that you're hooked. You don't even know that you're hooked on sugar as a drug until you stay away from it. It doesn't mean you'll stop eating sugar, because sugar is a form of energy. Every plant produces sugar, so sugar is not bad. I'm not knocking sugar. Every vegetable, anything that grows has sugar in it. But it's what type of sugar. See, they didn't teach you that. They never taught you that. They just say sugar, you need sugar, and then they just give you this big bag of sugar and put it in front of you. So a lot of you, and a lot of us, myself included, I have to put myself in this, are addicted to sugar. And I'm working on that. And I've been off of it on different times, and I get back on it. You know, you get addicted to it. Especially a lot of vegans, because as being a vegan, you know, you're not eating as much meat, so you probably take in more sugar and more junk than people that eat meat. Yeah, that's right. I gotta say it. I gotta bring balance to it. A lot of us vegans eat more junk than meat eaters. So you can mess around and get sugar diabetes. Now, if you're a melanated person, sugar is not programmed to your DNA as much as it is other groups and other species. So this is why if you're melanated, you talk all this stuff. Well, I'm melanated, and you can't even see into certain dimensions. And you can't pierce the fog. It's because you're taking in all this sugar. You smoking cigarettes. You snorting cocaine. You shooting up heroin. You doing all of this stuff. You call yourself melanated though, but you can't experience certain dimensions because you're fucking your melanin up. And I'm harder on melanated people for a reason. And I'm not racist against melanated. If you look at me, I'm melanated. My whole family's melanated. I'm not racist against anyone. People say you need to do more melanin centered information. My information is universally centered. I address everyone. But people with melanin are no better. If your diet, you have to eat a better diet to even get the benefits of this spacesuit called melanin. It doesn't benefit you. This is why I don't teach like certain teachers. They teach that, you know, if you black you better, and you know, and they teach on the exclusivity of the races, and you know, the black people are the chosen ones. I don't get into that, because if black people are the chosen ones, why are you suffering the most fucking hell in this reality? And it's because you eating somebody else's diet. Sugar doesn't even grow in Africa. They don't even have a lot of sugar crops out there. Just told you that. They may be growing more of it now, but back then they didn't have a lot of sugar crops. You don't read about it. I mean, we used honey as a sweetener. We didn't eat a lot. We ate more bitter foods. Women, this is another thing. Men are not supposed to eat as much sugar as women. Men are supposed to eat more bitter foods. This is what they teach in Africa. So sugar is key, man, to understanding sugar. So you have different forms of sugar. Now, if you're European or if you are Asian, you can get away with eating more sugar than a melanated person and still be able to experience certain spiritual, mystical states. Now, I'm not saying if you want to be supreme, you should get away from it. When I say get away from it, I'm talking about refined sugars. So let me address what the refined sugar is. See, what they do is with the refined sugar is they mix it in syrup to make it more sweet. See, they don't tell you that. This is within the refinement process. They mix it with syrup. They go through all of these processes. That's why it's called processed sugar, and this is what you're really addicted to. You can never really be addicted to sugar, the sugar cane that comes out the ground. So I balance it out with that information. The sugar cane that comes out the ground, you would never be addicted to that as much as you are addicted to the refined sugars, because they're mixing up with other things that they're not telling you anything of. So the refined sugars is not even a natural sugar. So you have your natural sugar and your unnatural sugar. Now the last thing I'll address before I shut this video down on understanding sugar is I'll address the dealing with the corn syrup. the high fructose corn syrup. Now, corn, you have to understand, is not the only way to make a syrup. So when they say, because people say, well, should I get like stevia or should I get, the like fructose? You see certain people that they say they use fructose instead of sugar. You have to understand that if it's based in corn, it's a whole conspiracy in that, because corn is not really even as digestible. Corn was something that they fed like cattle, and they fed like animals. We didn't partake in corn. Humans in general, we didn't eat corn. That's new. They got us on the corn conspiracy. You can get a video called Food Inc. and they'll address corn. They putting corn in everything. Corn syrup and ketchup. Corn syrup and this. Corn and corn on just about everything. And you wonder, why are they using corn? It's because it's genetically modified. And they're using that because it's cheaper, so they can create more things out of that one crop, so they can just grow a bunch of corn and create more products out of that versus really farming. You don't really have a lot of real farmers that are growing separate herbs. They're just growing a bunch of the same thing to keep you addicted to this food machine called the global economy, that really, in essence, needs to be shifted. There's nothing wrong with the fact that we have a global economy based on food, so I can eat food from Asia, or I can eat food from Mexico, or I can eat certain crops from Africa because we have a global economy. But the thing is that it's a conspiracy about as far as which farmers are getting the most business because of the way the global economy is set up. The big business, the big pharma, is only going to buy from certain crops, people that are, just it's basically locked into this Monsanto thing. If you're not growing corn, if you're not growing these certain crops that they specifically limit you to, then they're not going to really put a lot of money into you. So you're not being a farmer is not going to really pay off a lot because of the fact that you're only producing, because of the fact that if you're producing something like, say, for instance, moringa, which is what I sell on my site, I want to create a moringa revolution. I'm working on that. I'm getting ready to link up with some people internationally so we can get moringa in, because moringa is something to help you get off the sugar, actually, taking that. But anyway, as far as that whole conspiracy dealing with corn syrup, that's what you have to realize, that they're mixing up corn syrup in with the refined sugars and making it more sweets to keep you addicted to the global economy, to keep the farmers in power, to keep the industry going the way it is. And nobody wants to change it because they don't want to upset the system or whatnot. But we can have a global economy where we put on and we get foods and start having more stuff in different grocery stores, like a variety of products. And this is one thing I do like about Whole Foods, because if you go on Whole Foods, you see a variety of products on an international market. But even they're cutting back. Like from when I used to go to Whole Foods 5 years ago, it's different now. And it's because it's just not lucrative, man. Like, a lot of people aren't eating healthy, and it's hard. These businesses are closing down. That's why we have to start promoting health more. I have to. I got to start talking about it more, because I have, quite a few listeners. And that's the number one thing is spirituality. You can't even understand aliens, ETs, or nothing unless you understand health. So yeah, that's one thing. And then lastly, I'll talk about lactose. Now, this is really universal too. As humans, your body stops producing, naturally your body produces lactose as a baby. This is why you can give a baby milk and they'll be cool for the most part. But really, the mama's milk is best. You should be breastfeeding your babies for as long as you can, actually, as a mother. Even if the baby's 3 or 4 years old, that's why you see women in Africa, they still breastfeeding their baby. The baby might be, until the baby starts growing teeth, that's when you stop. But as long as that baby doesn't have any teeth, breastfeed it. Because milk, the baby naturally produces milk. But if you can't, for whatever reasons, the baby naturally produces lactose in general because it feeds off of that. But at a certain age, you stop producing lactose. So they tell you milk doesn't got body good and you need milk. You don't necessarily need milk. You need calcium. See, they don't tell you the root of what you need. They just tell you need milk. They're saying that because they're saying you need calcium, because your bones are based on calcium, and having strong bones and being strong is based on having a lot of calcium. And a lot of vegans, they're weak. See, I'm not a weak vegan. I might look kind of thin and lean, but I'm strong. I'm like Bruce Lee. One hit, knock your ass out. But nah, seriously, but I'm not weak. I'm not weak vegan. It's because I drink taking a lot of calcium. I understand that. But lactose is a form of sugar, and you can become lactose intolerant. This is why people are always got mucus or runny noses, and they're always seems like it's mucus caught up in them or whatever. This is because you're lactose intolerant. So something you're eating has lactose in it. It's too much, and lactose is a form of sugar. So sugar can actually make you clogged up too. Eating too much sugar. This is why people snore. We eat too much. Like when I eat too many cookies before I go to bed, yeah, I do it. Right, Hotep sometimes I eat too many cookies before I go to bed, I snore. I'm just keeping it real because I'm not afraid to say I'm not perfect. Like I'm not this type of vegan that's just doing everything correctly. But one thing I will say is that I take in mostly natural sugars. Like when I eat cookies, I don't eat cookies that were most of the time. Sometimes they are from refined sugars, but many times they use more natural sweeteners to sweeten these things. So I don't just go to the store and go and get a Hershey's candy bar. Like I can taste the difference if I eat a Hershey's or a Twix candy bar versus the type of snacks that I eat. I can taste the difference in that chocolate. There's different forms of chocolate, different levels to it. That's cheap chocolate. And it has some stuff in it that I won't mess you up because I don't want to mess up guys that eat chocolate, but you'll stop eating chocolate if you knew what was in it. You get a consultation with me and maybe I'll tell you. Because I don't want to tell people publicly because last time I told people that milk was cow mucus, cow snot, and everybody says that they just can't seem to get over that. I was tweeting about that one time and they still to this day like, man, you said milk was cow snot, cow pus. So yeah, that's going to do it for me. Just understanding and getting over this sugar conspiracy is really just essentially understanding the different versions of sweeteners and sugars and putting them in perspective. And really, first and foremost, is just try to stay away from the raw sugar, guys. That's what I'm really ultimately saying. It's going to take you a while to get off the sugar. And don't get me wrong, sometimes when I go to sleep after doping up on sugar or whatever, eating certain sugars, sugar is a form of alchemy. It's a chemical. And I mean, I have some amazing dreams after. I'm not going to lie. So at the same time, I'm an alchemist, so this is why I understand that sometimes you have to mix up certain things to create a certain effect. But I say try to get it from the best source, from the alkaline source. If you're really addicted to sugar, get you some dates. They're naturally sweet and they will help you to get off sugar if you're really having a hard time. I would encourage you guys to stay away from sugar at some point in your life, and you'll find out just how bad you're hooked to it. Tell yourself consciously to stay away. I'm not going to eat any sugars, any sweets, and stay away from it. And I bet you see real quick, buddy, how addicted you are to that thing right there. So I hope that helped. This video on sugar, and I'm going to go ahead and shut this video down. Until we meet again, I'll leave you in peace, abundance, good health, good vibes.